My husband's brother convinced him to invest our life savings in his guaranteed business venture. When we lost everything, he shrugged and said, "That's just business." I divorced my husband and started over. 3 years later, I bought his brother's house at foreclosure. I'm Ashley, 32 years old, female. I can still picture the night it all started. The exact moment when the ground shifted under my feet and I didn't even realize I was already falling. It was a Friday, and my husband, Mark, 34 male, came home buzzing with a kind of nervous energy I hadn't seen in him since college. He tossed his jacket onto the couch, pulled a beer from the fridge, and told me his brother, Jason, 38 male, had the opportunity of a lifetime. Jason has always been the bigger personality between the two of them. Loud, charismatic, the type who talks with his hands and can sell you on an idea before you even realize he hasn't given you a single concrete fact. I'd known him for 10 years at that point, and I'd learned to take everything he said with a grain of salt. He was the dreamer. Mark was supposed to be the grounded one. That's why when Jason pitched this guaranteed business venture, a luxury gym franchise he claimed was backed by serious investors, I expected Mark to laugh it off. Instead, he listened. He nodded. He leaned forward like Jason was explaining the cure for cancer. "Babe," Mark said to me that night, "this is our shot. Jason's got connections, the location's perfect, and the numbers make sense. We could double, maybe triple our savings in a year." Our savings, not his. Not Jason's. Mine too. Money I'd been putting away since I was 22, skipping trips, living in cheap apartments, saying no when my friends splurged on handbags or bottomless brunches. Every dollar had a plan. The house we were supposed to buy, the kids we'd talked about having someday. I remember the way Jason looked at me across our kitchen table when I asked what kind of risk was involved. He gave me this little smirk, the kind men give when they've already decided you're just being emotional. "No risk," he said. "This is business 101. You get in early, you win. Trust me." And God help me, Mark did. He trusted him. I should have fought harder. I should have slammed my hand down on the table and said absolutely not. But when your husband of 6 years looks at you with eyes lit up like a kid at Christmas, whispering about how this could be the thing that changes everything, you want to believe him. You want to be the supportive wife, the one who doesn't crush his excitement with a laundry list of what-ifs. So I said, "Okay, but we're being careful." Except careful didn't exist once Jason was in the room. Within weeks, Mark had liquidated our savings account, every last dollar we had, and funneled it straight into Jason's gym dream. I remember signing the transfer paperwork, my hand trembling so badly I had to set the pen down twice. I told myself it was temporary, that Jason wouldn't screw us over, that Mark knew what he was doing. But deep down, even then, I think I knew. Because the night after that meeting, when Mark was asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, and all I could hear was Jason's voice echoing in my head. That smug little chuckle when I'd asked about the risk. "No risk, that's just business." And something inside me whispered back, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The first cracks showed faster than I expected. 2 months after Mark handed Jason our life savings, the luxury gym was still nothing but an empty strip mall unit with peeling paint and a for-lease sign half hanging from the window. Jason kept brushing off my questions with vague promises. Permits were in the works. Equipment was on back order. Investors were finalizing contracts. Every excuse was dressed up with just enough jargon to keep Mark hanging on. But behind the curtain, Jason was living larger than ever. He suddenly had a new truck, dinners at steakhouses, flashy watches that Mark swore were networking expenses. I'd see the receipts shoved in our mailbox, lease payments, catering bills, consulting fees, all charged to the so-called business account. My stomach twisted every time, but when I brought it up, Mark defended him like it was gospel. "He knows what he's doing, Ash. You've got to stop nitpicking every detail. This is how businesses grow." Except nothing was growing. Our savings were gone, and Jason didn't even pretend to hide it. One night, we were at his house, his massive rental, not bought, rented. And when I pressed him about the lack of progress, he leaned back in his chair, swirling his whiskey like a villain from a bad movie. "Relax," he said. "Sometimes you lose a little before you win big. That's just business." The way he said it, smug, dismissive, made my blood boil. It wasn't his little. It was everything Mark and I had ever built. Then came the day the landlord called. Apparently, Jason hadn't paid rent on the gym space in 3 months. The lease was terminated. No gym, no investors, no business venture. Mark sat at the kitchen table, pale and silent, as I read the letter out loud. It was like watching him deflate, his shoulders folding in on themselves. I waited for him to finally explode at Jason, to demand answers, something. Instead, he whispered, "Maybe it'll still work out." He said he's got another idea. That was the moment something in me cracked. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stared at my husband, the man I'd trusted with my future, and realized he wasn't going to protect us. Not from Jason, not from his own blind faith. I walked into our bedroom, opened the closet, and saw the shoebox where I used to keep my rainy day stash. Cash I'd saved behind Mark's back over the years, tucked away for emergencies. It wasn't much, maybe $3,000, but it was all I had left that was mine. When I saw the box was empty, my knees gave out. Mark must have found it. And that was when I knew this wasn't just Jason's betrayal. It was Mark's too. Don't forget to subscribe. The night I found the empty shoebox, I didn't sleep. By morning, I was running on rage and coffee fumes. Mark stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed, and I shoved the box at him. "Where's the money?" He froze. "Ash, listen, Jason needed—" I cut him off. "Jason needed? That was mine, not ours. Mine. And you gave it to him?" For the first time, Mark didn't have an excuse. He just sat there, face buried in his hands. That silence was worse than any fight. We both knew he'd chosen Jason over me. I didn't wait. I drove straight to Jason's rental, stormed in before he could finish his morning coffee. He was standing in silk pajamas, smirking like he'd been waiting for me. "Oh, Ashley, didn't Mark tell you? It's an investment." I lost it. "You stole from me. That was my money, Jason. You're bleeding us dry and laughing about it." He leaned closer, voice low but sharp enough to cut. "You think you're the first person to lose money in business? Grow up. If you can't handle risk, stay out of the game." Then, he actually laughed. Laughed? I slapped the mug off the counter so hard it shattered against the tile, coffee splattering up the walls. Jason didn't even flinch. He just smirked wider. "That tempers why Mark listens to me and not you." That line nearly broke me. It was the confirmation of everything I already feared. Jason saw me as the nagging wife, easy to ignore. And Mark had let him. After that, things spiraled fast. Bill collectors started calling daily. Our mortgage went unpaid for the first time ever. Mark, once steady and reliable, was unraveling, snapping at me over nothing, drinking late into the night, staring blankly at his phone when I asked how we'd fix this. One night, I came home from my second shift at the diner, because yes, I'd picked one up just to keep food on the table, and found Mark passed out on the couch. His phone was still glowing. On the screen was a text from Jason. "Don't listen to her. She's dead weight. We're still gonna make it big. I've got another plan." Dead weight. That was me. To them, I wasn't a wife or partner. I was baggage, dragging behind their fantasy. I walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and for the first time whispered the words I'd been choking back for months. "I'm leaving." The night I whispered "I'm leaving," I still gave Mark one last chance. Call it stupidity, call it loyalty. I needed to know I hadn't walked out too early. The next morning, I asked him to meet me at the bank. I wanted us to look at the accounts together, to face the wreckage head-on. If he stood beside me, maybe there was something left to save. He agreed. For a second, hope flickered. At the branch, we sat with the teller while she pulled up our account. My heart dropped. Balance, $14.72. Savings, 0. Credit cards, maxed. "Where did it go, Mark?" My voice cracked, but I kept it steady. He rubbed his temples. "Jason needed operating cash," I snapped. "There is no gym. There's no business. He used you and you dragged me down with him." Instead of fighting for me, Mark whispered, "He's my brother." That was it. The last nail. I went home, packed a duffel bag, and called a lawyer. Divorce papers were filed within the week. Jason's reaction came fast. 2 nights later, I heard pounding on my apartment door. I opened it to find him red-faced, half-drunk, screaming loud enough for neighbors to peek through blinds. "You think you can walk away clean?" he roared. "You owe me. I built you a future and you spat on it." I locked the chain and told him if he didn't leave, I'd call the cops. That set him off. He punched the door so hard the frame cracked, then shouted down the hallway, "Mark's nothing without me. And you? You'll come crawling back when you've got nothing." The cops came, but by the time they arrived, Jason was gone. I filed a restraining order the next day. Mark didn't even show up to fight for me in court. He was too busy chasing Jason's next idea. When the divorce finalized, I walked out with nothing but my car, a couple of boxes, and that empty shoebox that once held my emergency fund. It felt fitting, hollow, but mine again. I started over from scratch. New apartment, 2 jobs, rebuilding credit one agonizing step at a time. It was brutal, but it was mine. And as the months passed, something unexpected happened. I got stronger. The weight of Jason's schemes and Mark's blind loyalty was gone. For the first time in years, every dollar I earned stayed in my account. Every choice was mine. But I never forgot Jason's laugh or his words. That's just business. Because 3 years later, I'd get the chance to throw them right back in his face. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow, I honestly didn't expect my inbox to explode like this. I read through so many of your comments, some supportive, some brutal, and I've got to say, a lot of you saw things clearer than I did when I was living in it. Some of y'all straight up called Mark spineless. At the time, I kept convincing myself he was just loyal or misguided. But reading your words hit me like a truck. He wasn't a victim. He chose Jason over and over, even when it meant crushing me in the process. That's not loyalty, that's weakness. And Jason, God, the number of DMs I got from people saying, "This guy sounds like every slick con artist I've ever met." You're not wrong. Someone even said, "Men like him always overextend. They'll drown themselves eventually." That comment stuck with me. Because here's what's wild. 3 years later, I'm seeing it happen in real time. After the divorce, I went no contact. Moved to a tiny 1-bedroom, took on 2 jobs, and started clawing my way back. It was hell at first. Eating ramen, dodging bill collectors, trying not to cry every time I saw an old couple shopping together at Target. But little by little, I rebuilt. Credit score crept up. Savings account had numbers in it again. I even got promoted at my day job. Meanwhile, Jason kept burning through people. Every few months, I'd hear from mutual acquaintances, some revolutionary app he was pitching, some import business that flopped, some investor who pulled out after realizing Jason had no plan. Each failure was bigger, louder. And then 2 weeks ago, I saw something that made me stop cold. A foreclosure notice in the local listings. Jason's house. The same rental he used to flaunt like a palace? He'd bought it later on when things looked good. And now he couldn't pay the mortgage. I can't even lie, I laughed. Loud, ugly laughed, right in the middle of the coffee shop. People stared. Didn't care. Because here's the thing. I've been saving. Patiently. Quietly. I've got a down payment ready. And that foreclosure auction is coming up fast. Some of you told me, back when I first shared this, don't waste your energy on revenge. Just move on. I respect that. Truly. But sometimes life sets the chessboard for you. And when the man who sneered, "That's just business," loses the very house he used to humiliate you in, you don't walk away. You play the game better. The week before the auction, I drove by Jason's place just to see it with my own eyes. The house that once screamed, "Look at me," was falling apart. Grass knee-high, shutters dangling, 3 trash bags piled on the porch. His shiny truck was gone, probably repossessed. And through the window, I caught a glimpse of him pacing in a stained t-shirt, shouting into his phone. Later that night, a mutual friend confirmed it. Jason was in freefall. Investors wanted refunds. Creditors were circling. His wife had already taken the kids and gone to her mother's. He was alone, broke, and still trying to spin lies about his next big thing. I should have felt pity. Instead, I felt something I hadn't in years: satisfaction. The morning of the auction, I dressed sharp, not flashy, but deliberate. Hair neat, blazer pressed, papers ready. I wasn't just showing up to buy a house. I was showing up to close a chapter. The courthouse steps were crowded with bidders. And there he was, Jason, sweating, jittery, looking 10 years older. When he spotted me, his face twisted like he'd seen a ghost. "What the hell are you doing here?" he spat. I smiled. "That's just business, isn't it?" He went pale. The auctioneer read the terms, and when Jason realized I was holding the cashier's check, he lost it. Right there, in front of everyone. "You can't do this. That's my house." He shoved forward, nearly tripping on the steps, pointing at me like a madman. "She's my brother's ex. This is personal. This is harassment." The auctioneer barely looked up. "Highest bid wins. That's the law." When the bidding started, Jason tried to fight, shouting numbers he couldn't cover, begging someone to back him up. Nobody did. Within minutes, the gavel dropped. The house was mine. Jason's scream wasn't even words, just raw, broken noise. He kicked the railing so hard it splintered. Security had to pull him back while he shouted, "You'll regret this. You're nothing without us. Nothing." But the words bounced off me. For once, I wasn't the one standing hollow while he laughed. He was. As I signed the papers, my hand didn't shake this time. My signature was steady, final. Jason had taken my savings, my marriage, my peace of mind. But I had just bought the walls he used to gloat inside, and I wasn't done yet. The day after I got the keys, Jason was already circling. I pulled into the driveway with a moving van, and there he was, leaning against a beat-up sedan parked across the street. Arms crossed, eyes burning holes in me. The second I stepped out, he stormed over. "You think you won, huh?" His voice cracked, loud enough for the neighbors to peek out. "You ruined my life. You ruined my brother." I didn't flinch. "No, Jason, you ruined yourself, and you dragged Mark down with you." That's when he lost it. He grabbed the "for sale" sign still staked in the yard and hurled it across the grass, screaming, "This is mine! You stole it!" He started pounding on the hood of my moving van like a toddler throwing a tantrum. The driver called the cops before I even asked. By the time the sirens came, Jason was on his knees in the yard, sobbing and cursing. The cops pulled him away, but not before he shouted at me, "You'll never erase me. I'll always be in his blood. You can't change that." That cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Because he was right about one thing. Mark. My ex-husband had stayed silent through all of this. Not a call, not an email. But I knew Jason still had his hooks in him. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a text from Mark. "Please don't do this. He's in a bad place. Selling the house was low. Can't you just let it go?" That text burned. Mark still couldn't see it. Still defending his brother, even now. So I decided my first act in the house had to be for me. Something Jason couldn't spin, couldn't ignore. I walked into the living room, the same one where he'd smirked at me years ago, telling me losing everything was just business. I set down a framed copy of my deed right where his giant TV used to hang, and took a hammer to the marble bar he'd bragged about at every party. Each swing sent shards flying, and with every crack I felt lighter. By the time I was done, the bar was rubble, the air filled with dust. My arms ached, my chest heaved, but I felt like I'd taken back a piece of myself he'd stolen. Jason thought he'd written me out of the story. Now, I was living in the very walls of his downfall, and something told me he wasn't finished lashing out. Update 2. So, y'all weren't kidding when you said Jason would spiral. After my last post, a bunch of you said, "He's not done. Guys like this always escalate." I thought maybe you were being dramatic. Nope, you called it. The day I moved into Jason's old house, he showed up like some deranged ghost haunting his own past. Screaming, throwing things, pounding on my moving van until the cops dragged him off the lawn. And get this, he actually cried. Full on, red-faced, snotty crying, wailing that I'd stolen his life. This from the same man who once smirked at me and said losing my life savings was just business. Reddit, I can't explain the satisfaction of watching him scream those words back at me. Like hearing my own pain thrown into his throat until it broke him. And then Mark. God. My ex-husband, the man I once trusted with everything, finally texted me after 3 years of silence. Not to apologize, not to ask how I was doing, but to beg me to go easy on Jason. Some of you called him spineless in my first post, and I defended him in my head. I told myself he was manipulated, confused, loyal to a fault. But no. Reading his text, I realized you were right. He's not blind. He chooses to stay in Jason's shadow, even as his whole world crumbles. I didn't reply. There's nothing left to say. And here's the thing. For the first time, I feel free. Not just divorced free, but truly unchained. Every hammer swing I took to that marble bar in Jason's living room felt like breaking stone off my own chest. That house is mine now. Every cracked tile, every dent in the wall. His downfall is my foundation. Some of you suggested I rub it in, mail Jason a photo of me holding the keys, or throw a housewarming party just to salt the wound. Tempting. But honestly, I don't need to. His own rage is eating him alive. That's revenge enough. What I am going to do is renovate. Tear out every reminder of him, build something warm, safe, and mine. And every time I walk through that front door, I'll remember. He thought he'd destroyed me. Instead, I built my life on his ruins. And if that's just business, then I finally won. Renovating Jason's house felt like exorcism. The first thing to go was the giant mirror wall he'd installed in the living room. He used to brag that it made the space look as big as his ambitions. I smashed it piece by piece until the floor was glittering with shards. Behind it, rot, mold creeping up the drywall, like the house itself had been rotting under the surface, just like him. Every demolition revealed another lie. He'd cut corners everywhere, cheap wiring, plumbing patched with duct tape, leaks hidden with paint. All that money he claimed went into investments? He'd built a palace of shortcuts. While I rebuilt, Jason was spiraling in public. He showed up drunk at a local bar, ranting about how his house was stolen by a gold-digging ex-sister-in-law. The bartender, who also happened to be my neighbor, sent me a video. Jason, red-faced, slurring, pounding his chest and yelling that he'd be back on top in 6 months. The whole place laughed at him. And Mark? I finally saw him too. One afternoon, I pulled up to the house and spotted him standing on the sidewalk, staring at it like he couldn't bring himself to walk closer. When he noticed me, he didn't wave or smile, just turned and walked away. He looked thinner, older, a shell. Jason had drained him dry. I didn't call after him. I didn't owe him that anymore. Instead, I focused on me. I worked, saved, and turned that house into something Jason never could. A home. New floors, fresh paint, a kitchen that actually worked. The neighbors, who once rolled their eyes at Jason's constant noise and parties, started stopping by to thank me for bringing the street back to life. One night, after finishing a coat of paint in the bedroom, I sat on the floor with takeout and a glass of wine. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Jason, not at Mark, just free. But freedom has a funny way of attracting ghosts. A week later, I came outside to find deep scratches down the side of my car. Keys dragged from front to back, and in the driveway, written in black spray paint, thief. I didn't need a detective to know who did it. Jason wasn't done with me, not yet. The morning after I found thief spray painted on my driveway, I filed a police report. The officer didn't even look surprised. "We've had complaints about him before," he said. "You're not the first." That should have made me feel safer. It didn't. Because 2 nights later, Jason proved he wasn't done. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of pounding on the front door. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but when I peeked through the window, I saw him. Jason. Drunk, shirt half-buttoned, shouting up at the house. "This is mine! You stole everything! You think you're better than me?" I didn't open the door. I turned on every light in the house and let him scream himself hoarse. Neighbors came out, cameras recording. Within minutes, the cops pulled up and dragged him off the porch. He was kicking, spitting, wailing like a child. That was the last time I saw Jason in person. A month later, he was in county jail. DUI, property damage, resisting arrest. His mugshot made the rounds on Facebook. The same man who once sneered at me, saying I was too weak for business, now looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Mark? He finally reached out again, this time with a single email. You were right. I don't even recognize him anymore. I don't know who I am without him. I didn't reply. That was his path to figure out. Mine was already paved. Because on the same day Jason's mugshot hit the internet, my renovations were finished. I stood in the living room, the same one where he once laughed at me, and looked around. Fresh paint, new light fixtures, polished floors. No rot. No mold. No lies. Before bed, I pulled one last thing from a box I'd saved all these years. The shoebox that used to hold my emergency fund. Empty when Mark betrayed me. Empty when Jason mocked me. I set it on the mantel. Inside, I placed the keys to the house. My house. For me, it was a reminder that I'd lost everything once: savings, marriage, stability, and still built something stronger out of the wreckage. Jason had laughed at my pain and called it business. But now, standing in the home I'd taken back brick by brick, I finally whispered back into the silence, "No, this is justice." And I turned off the lights, locking him out forever.